Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University. What a week. Easter week, spring breaks, March Madness, Final Four, days longer, the sun is shining. We starting to see green shoots out in the marketplace, starting to hear from a lot of you kids that you're starting to see internships come back, summer jobs, summer programs. So that's all positive. And we've got one of the greats today. I have been following her career for many years. There's a lot of professionals I love to follow. I love to study how they do strategy for companies and how they do their creative and servant leaders. And Andrea Brimmer is the CMO, Chief Marketing and Public Relations Officer at Ally Financial. And I'm sure you probably have seen many of their fun spots and the innovation that she is leading in the marketplace, and she's going to talk about her career, her passions. I also love the fact that she's a former student athlete. We've talked a lot about that. We've talked a lot about name and image and likeness. We talked about how you make the campus your ultimate professional lab, and so she was Adweek 2020 brand genius. I'm honored to be talking to a genius today. That's pretty intimidating. 50 most influential CMOs. I mean, just on and on and on and on. And you really made her chops in the automotive advertising business with my favorite brand, Chevrolet. So we welcome you, Andrea, to Virtual Melt University today. What an honor.
Thank you, Vince. It's very kind of you to say, and I'm excited to be here today, and I'm really excited to be here, especially with all the students. I know everyone's been going through a tough time, so hopefully I can be helpful in some ways, imparting some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years.
Well, we, before we jump into this, I tell our students that they are the most sophisticated generation of consumers. They have driven behavioral changes that you and I have obviously had to respond to, and you and your organization are personification of that. But I do believe once we get to the other side of this could be a golden revolution, a renaissance for these kids if they will apply the old school to the new school. And
absolutely,
we're going to talk about that today. But before we sort of dive into everything, and obviously you're very successful student athlete, Michigan State University, the Spartans. We love them very much. Playing soccer, but we always like to draw it back to passion. So obviously, as you were growing up, you played competitive sports. You had a passion for sports, but overlaying that is a passion for performance and excellence. So we tell our students, no matter what your passion is, just pursue it with zeal. So Where did your original passion originate or emanate?
I think I always draw it back to the fact that I'm from a strong ethnic family. I'm 100% Greek. Mm-hmm. My grandparents came over from Greece. And they both, they didn't have any education. They didn't speak English, came to Ellis Island, the whole 9 yards. They're self-taught. They started successful businesses. My dad was a judge. My mom and exceptionally smart and very fierce, and she was always a strong feminist. And my family it's a hard charging family. And I think they instilled a work ethic in us for personal excellence, personal integrity, and a high standard to hold ourselves to, no matter what we wanted to do. And that passion was really derived from, I think, the legacy of the things that my family has accomplished. And I from a very early age, I loved advertising. I love brands. I loved.
Right.
I had a huge fascination with why do people fall in love with certain brands? What creates that? And how can I be a part of creating that? And I've always wanted to be in the business since I was very, very young. And I'm one of those people where when I make up my mind I want to do something, that's it. Like you can't alter my course.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that, and you touched on something that's sort of a pet peeve of mine, and I talk about a lot to our students is that prior to the pandemic, it was a seller's market for talent, and I would
Sure.
have kids that would come in and within 2 or 3 months wanted to, what their career path was, and they didn't want to be doing this, or they had a run-in with a boss, or they wanted to be the CEO. And I said, and if they didn't get it, they would flip and leave.
Yeah.
And overnight, that has gone away. But I want you to talk about like you and I, we're overnight successes. It was just a long night, and what we still have to do. I mean, you were talking about, you travel, 170 business trips, and which is absolutely just brutal. But I want you to talk about, as you are seeing kids come out into the new workplace, particularly, during post COVID. My litmus question is, what did you do to improve yourself or others during COVID? Because these are the intangibles that are going to separate the wheat from the chaff and getting a job with you and Ally Financial, right?
Absolutely. And Vince, when I was coming up in the advertising business, when I was on the agency side, I always had this saying, you're only as good as your last presentation.
No
And
doubt.
right. And
No
that's
doubt.
the reality. And even today, that's the reality. Even as a CMO at a Fortune 250 company, I still look, it's not quite that dramatic, but the reality is I'm paid to perform every single solitary day. And I don't take that for granted. And where I see, because I, like you, have a passion for helping students. I spent a lot of time on the Forbes CMO circuit. We go out, we talk to colleges and universities constantly about cultivating the next generation of excellence in marketing. And I have 4 kids myself. And the big thing that I always push on is how can you create separation for yourself, whether it's through your accomplishments or through your effort. And I think what I'm seeing, what I'm somewhat stunned by is how many students will reach out to me and we'll have a conversation and I'll say, I'll help you just, do this, this, and this. And then I never hear from them again.
Unbelievable.
And it's the ones that are consistent, that have incredible follow through, that have this incredible work ethic, and that don't take anything for granted, that are the ones that I've noticed that are creating their own separation and that are standing out. The other thing that I would leave you with is we're looking for people that have a voice. They're educated. They take the time to be a student of their craft, and they don't just come in and kind of check the boxes. They have an opinion. I want to hear from you. If we hire you, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you have to say. I hire you because you know something that I don't know. So bring that to me. And that really, I think, is how I see a lot of these students being able to separate themselves from the pack these days.
Well, I love that. I love that create separation, because what I preach to them is that, you came out of college, you were a successful student athlete. I came out of college, I had been published 200 times, produced hundreds of events. I knew I was going to put myself in that 5 percentile, and at some point the putt was going to drop.
Yep.
You brought up another thing too, and it is so true. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a long time to learn this, and I wish I had learned it sooner. But we are only as good as our last presentation, but it's never personal. So, they say, Vince, what business are you in? I say, I'm in the rejection business. And it took me a long time to learn, because I'm passionate, I'm emotional, I'm creative, and I want to win everything, and I want to have it. All of my ideas are big and great, but it's never personal when somebody tells you no, and maybe that doesn't mean it's a final. You never know where they are in the decision-making process. I want you to talk about it, help our kids learn and understand, not in any form of relationships, not to ever take it personal.
No, and that's a really hard thing to learn, and
It is.
it takes some time. And I'll give you a great example. When I was at Campbell Ewald on the agency side, we obviously, you mentioned we had the Chevrolet account, and we had a new general manager that came into Chevrolet, and he wanted a whole new campaign. He wanted us to blow up like a rock, which was, arguably one of the most successful campaigns.
I still get chills when I see those ads.
Right? Blow up whatever the car campaign was at the time and bring everything together under one campaign. And we had this idea for a campaign called An American Revolution. Mm-hmm. And we presented it 37 times before Chevrolet bought it.
Wow.
37 times.
Wow.
And the first time we took it to them, they hated it. I mean, they decimated the campaign. And, the creative director and I kind of went back to the agency with our heads in our hats and our hands a little bit, but we had a personal belief in it, and we knew it could do great things for Chevrolet. And that was a perfect example of, we were not going to stop until we got the answer that we wanted. And we realized it had nothing to do with us. We just had to figure out how to make it better. We needed to figure out how to take the input that we were given and to make the adjustments that needed to be made in order to better it. And ultimately, they bought the campaign. It became one of the most successful campaigns in Chevrolet history. We won all kinds of awards. But I think that's the perfect example to really go with the story. The question that you just asked, which is, you just can't give up. If you believe in something, just keep going. It's like a sport, right?
Well, and you said so many things I want to unpack, because I know you won't be shocked when I tell you this, but I will get so many generic resumes to a generic website that says, to whom it may concern, here's my resume and I need to make X amount of dollars. And do you know what I do and don't do with that? It could be the Pope and I don't open it up. Right. Because first of all, they're showing me the effort or lack of effort. Secondly, you got to be in a cave with bin Laden not to figure out who I am.
Right.
I even get these generic resumes from kids at Auburn, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm the poster child for the liberal arts school down here, and play to my ego, play to my emotional connections. But show me, I tell the kids, this is not a job application. It's a job process. It's an audition. You have as much time it takes to pass a billboard on the interstate to get my or Andrea's attention.
Absolutely.
So because, and you pointed it out, they're communicating the type of effort that they would be as an employee of yours, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a young lady last summer that just blew me out of the water. She reached out to me. She was looking for an internship. She didn't have one. And she said, I've studied you, I've studied your brand, I've studied your company. Here's all the things that I admire about you, admire about your company. I know you probably are already full on internships, but I am willing to work all summer for free. Wow. And if you think the amount of effort that I put in is worth it, then I will accept payment at the end of the summer. Wow. And just that idea that she would work all summer for free, I reached out to her immediately. We brought her on. We paid her all summer. I'm like, look, I'm going to pay you all summer for your effort. And we hired her. She's going to start full time when she graduates here next month. But it was just the level of effort that she went to and finding a unique idea that separated her from the pack that made her stand out. And here she is now. She's going to come right out of school with full-time employment. So, exactly. A little bit of effort. It probably took her an hour to do that research and send that email. But look what it did for her in the end.
Well, she also connected with your value system, and she also was showing you what value she was going to bring into your organization. And we preach this to these kids. It's like, hey, it's only as important as you make it.
Absolutely.
And I'm still shocked after spending $200,000 in 4 years getting a great academic education that the fundamentals of 101 of outreach, because hey, in the old days, I had to go to the library. And I had to use things like yellow pages and encyclopedias and resource guides. This is in the palm of their hands now.
Absolutely.
And so, and I like to say, I always like to say entry level is a fishing analogy, 100 casts for 8 job bites for 2 solid leads. I think entry level now is going to probably be 500 for 8 for 2 because so many people are unemployed in our space that they're willing to take a lesser job for a lesser salary. So, I mean, it's going to be a tumble cycle out there for a while. But let me go back to litmus. And I loved what you said. Like on social media, I don't care if I agree with their point of view or not, as long as they're showing me they're authentic, but they're also showing me the judgment that they're using in positioning their personal brand out there. I'm actually okay with that because tell our students that one of the first things that you and I do is go scrub their social media profiles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you and this is something I've talked about with my own kids, right? Which is be smart about your personal brand and what you're putting out there. I have this saying that you come into this world with your integrity and it's your choice of whether or not you lead with it.
Wow.
And that applies to everything in your life, right? Whether it's what you post in social media, whether it's the way that you approach your job, whether it's the way that you approach your personal relationships. And I think that you have to reflect your values. It's okay to have strong opinions, but there's a way to do it with respect, and there's a way to do it in a manner that shows the kind of morals that you have. And absolutely, every company is going out. I mean, if they're not, they're missing a big opportunity because at the end of the day, once you start at a company, whether you like it or not, your social media becomes the property of that company.
Right.
And you reflect that brand's values.
I don't think people understand that.
No. And it's the reality. I don't post anything that does not reflect what Ally would want me to project. And if I do have a strong opinion on something that is counter to the belief system of the company, it's better kept to small personal circles than it is to post in social media.
Right. No, it goes back to the old Mark Twain saying, like you can sit there silent and know what a dummy you are, open your mouth and share it with the rest of the world or something like that. But, but like I said, again, I don't mind the authenticity, but we have to be very careful because you can strike a match and then all of a sudden it's a worldwide flame. And we talk about a lot about, kids' personal brand, how they want to position it. How they want to position it. And again, like I said, thank God there was no Facebook when I was at Auburn because I probably, I probably would have been challenged as it relates to positioning my own personal brand on social media.
You're blowing yourself up, huh, Vince?
Right, but I do. There's another space that I want you to talk about because I'm a huge proponent of building and maintaining relationships. And people say, Vince, what's your secret of working with the Coca-Cola company for 21 years? I go, it's very simple. I never take the relationship for granted. Yep. A relationship is like a plant or a flower. You got to cultivate it, trim it, water it, fertilize it, give it sunlight. We say the first two letters of relationship are RE, and the first two letters of reciprocal are RE. It never is a transaction. It's got to be, hey, what can I do for you today? And putting that karma out and positive energy in the universe, and you just never know when it will come back. So I want you to talk about sort of for our students, because we love to hear it from the great ones, your philosophy of relationship building and maintenance. And it just doesn't always have to be transactional.
No, I have this personal belief, and I learned it during my tenure on the agency side, where I realized that the higher up people seemed to go in the organization, the more precious they became. And I always thought to myself, I never want to do that. I never want to drink my own Kool-Aid. When I die, my tombstone's not going to say Andrea Brimmer, CMO of Ally. It's going to say wife, mother, friend, daughter. That's what I want to be remembered for, and the kind of human being that I am. And so I bring that to work every single solitary day. And one of the things that I'm the most proud of is that my turnover rate since I've been CMO at Ally has been less than 1%.
That's huge.
And we're in a really competitive space, right? But it's because of the culture that I've tried so hard to build. And maybe that comes from my athletic background, but it's definitely a we. It's a team sport. It is without a doubt. It's never my accomplishment or what I did. I don't do anything by myself. And it's all about the team, and it's all about keeping an open door. It's about listening to everyone. Ultimately, you've got to make a decision, but never get so big in your career that you feel like there's only a certain cadre of people that you can talk to. I want to talk to the younger people. I want to talk to everybody on the team. They're on the front lines, they're hearing things. And I
Right.
try to cultivate those relationships as much as possible. And then I just am a big believer, Vince, in like I'm really good about answering every single email. I'm really good about keeping in touch with people. I have a very strong philosophy around if somebody reaches out and asks me for help, I'm going to help them no matter what. And I just believe in respect. That's the way that I was raised, and I try and put good karma out into the world, and I think it comes back. And I think that's the least that you can do is give
Mhm.
that little effort of yourself to people that need you.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head. I'm always honored and flattered that anybody would want to ask me for help. So I consider it an obligation and a responsibility to give back. But I do know if you put that positive energy out there when you need it, it will come back to you.
Sure does.
If you and it my old man always says artfully says, that ball turns in a circle 24 hours a day. Them you meet on the way up, you're going to meet, you'll meet them on the way down if you're not careful. So I do think that's spot on. And you talk about being a student athlete, and like I said, student athletes are my favorite, but it takes a lot of other people to put on that soccer match. And and
Yes.
and what we tell our students is, you look at an athletic department and you hear that term and you hear the term athletic director. The AD of Michigan State is the CEO of $100+ million organization. And
Right.
within that, there are so many opportunities. And we've interviewed a ton of athletic directors. We interviewed Michelle McKenna, the CIO of NFL, and we've uncovered like mental health is big, uh, uh, you know, uh, hydration, nutrition, performance, AI, content development. I mean, like, like so many opportunities. And if a student is not taking, now obviously we got to get over COVID, but if a student is not taking advantage of the professional opportunities on a college campus, the greatest laboratory in the world, they'll never have exposure to it ever again. They're missing the boat because when you see their resume, it's not necessarily the GPA or the test or any of that. Those are great, but like, what type of effort did they put in during those 4 years? Even if they were a barista at Starbucks, they were on the front lines of consumer behavior. So talk about the things you're looking for.
When I was a student athlete, it was really clear to me that especially when I graduated, that the kind of people I want to surround myself with would be people that um, were either student athletes or put an incredible amount of effort in college of making themselves more well-rounded. I
Right.
think that look, my husband's a football coach, and we talk about this all the time. He's a high school football coach. And he always says, I don't want kids that specialize in one sport. I want kids that played a lot of
Right.
sports
Right.
because they're the best athletes. And I think that you can apply that lesson right back to what you put in college. Yeah, we want people to have good grades, but I'd rather have somebody that either played a sport or somebody that worked or somebody that did internships or somebody that volunteered, because life is not one dimensional, and your work environment is certainly never going to be one dimensional. And you need to have the ability to pivot from thing to thing. Oftentimes I kind of joke with my best friend. We probably do more in a morning than most people do in an entire week. And that's just the
Right.
reality of life in the C-suite, right?
Right.
And
No,
so
it is.
you've got to have that stamina, and you've got to have that ability
I
to
love
be
that
able to
word.
cover a lot of ground.
Hmm.
And that's really what comes with that, what you can take when you round yourself out in school. At the end of the day, do I remember one thing that I learned in a classroom at school? I really don't. I mean, it's been a long time. There's a lot of space between me and my last class at Michigan State, Vince. But you know what I'll never forget, and I take with me every single solitary day, is the amount of effort that was required of me to have the stamina to be a student athlete. And I still apply it every single day in my life.
Right.
And that's where you got to be able to pull those lessons out, and you need to learn how to appreciate the little things that you're learning and how to apply them.
No, I love that. And I think it's amazing because, like I said, I think it's going to be a golden age for our students. I think, and hey, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that they got kind of thrown into a tumble cycle because, they've kind of gotten knocked about being the participation generation and getting a trophy. And some of everybody can be a hero during success, but getting knocked off the saddle is when you really learn the gumption about yourself or the grit about yourself. So let's transition into opportunities within your space. I like to say that you guys are, a modern day financial institution. You're not you're not in the traditional mode, and that goes back to our students are driving those behaviors, right? And
absolutely.
if you look at traditional banks, they're in the real estate business, and they got some giant challenges pre-COVID, and now not particularly not going into a bank or not being able to go into a bank. But I want you to talk about where the opportunities lie within this new banking and financial world, because like I said, you came from the agency side, then you go into a financial, which typically would have been a very conservative environment and those types of things. But you guys have been anything. I remember when I first saw the first Ally commercials, I was like, wow, they are way out there, and I loved it. It got my attention, and so talk about what our students need to consideration of marketing careers, in the financial services sector, and then the things that they, not necessarily journalism classes, but there are other things they might be needing to do to prepare to understand your profession and industry.
Yeah, look, finance is something that's never going to go away, right?
Right.
It's just that what was interesting for us is that we saw this incredible opportunity for disruption. If you think about when we launched the brand in the midst of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression.
That's a hell of a good timing on that. I remember that.
Yeah, and people said to us, why in the heck are you launching a bank right now? And we said, the world doesn't need another bank, it needs a better bank. And that's what drove us. And
wow.
we were born out of necessity, and we were born out of disruption. We felt like that we took a bet. We launched the same year that the iPhone launched, if you can believe that. And we took a bet that everybody was going to bank in the palm of their hand at some point, that the need for a branch system was antiquated, and that great customer service had been absent in this category for way too long.
Preaching to the choir.
So if you could marry ultimate customer centricity with frictionless digital experiences, that you would have something that would be highly differentiated. And that has created this explosion in this industry. And we say we're the original disruptor. You look at the fintechs, the Robinhoods of the world, the Chimes of the world, the Lemonades of the world, everybody that's coming up.
You're way ahead of those guys.
Way ahead in terms of what we've built. And so there's incredible opportunity in this space. There's incredible opportunity for students in any business that's a digital disruptor right now.
Right.
And they're in a strong vantage point because they understand the technology. They drove the utilization. They drove the idea. And so for us, I would say to the students, lean into what you know. Lean into your savvy around social media. Lean into your savvy around how you interact with and think about brands. Lean into your savvy around your use of technology and what you can bring to that. And then you have incredible opportunity to help us figure out where audiences are. As marketers right now, that's the biggest thing we're struggling with, right? You are those audiences.
We're chasing the Holy Grail, aren't we?
That's right. You know, one of the things we did this year, Vince, that was really cool, or I guess it was last year, is we created an island on Animal Crossing. It was an ally island, and we had so many people come to the island. We actually broke the game. We had to shut our island down for like 3 days. And the idea simply came from me watching my kids who were home during COVID, and all they were doing was playing video games when they weren't in school.
I get it.
Right. And so that's what these students can bring to us, these incredible insights. And that's where I said earlier, use your voice. That's where I would tell these kids, use your voice, bring ideas, bring fresh thinking, bring the knowledge that you have that we don't have, and create separation for yourself.
Well, and the notion, and think about it, and when my son's 21 now, but when he first started, playing these video games, and then I'd go, well, what are these charges for? He goes, it's virtual currency, Dad. I'm like, skins. What the hell is that? He goes, I'm like, that's the stupidest thing ever. He goes, well, you used to buy pictures on cardboard, cuts of cardboard, baseball cards, Dad. I'm like, oh, well, that's a good point. Then I started watching him compete with his friends online. I'm like, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Now esports is, but to your point,
I know,
the separation, the disruptors, and then, the island was born out of that generation. It became one of the most successful things that you guys did. So one thing too that we always talk to our great ones about, to our students, is that the ability to push yourself out of your comfort zone and shed your skin. So let's think about this. You had a massive, successful career on the agency side, 2 decades. I call it the sales side, the dark side, the jungle. So what made you want to push yourself, after a stellar career, to completely go to the other side and push yourself completely out of the comfort zone? I mean, because that's a big, bold move.
It was. And you know what, people are shocked when I tell them I took a pay cut to do this.
Wow.
When I came over. And the reason that I did it is I felt like I was getting too comfortable. I felt like I wasn't at the top of my game anymore, and I felt like I was getting a little bit complacent, and it was time for me to shake myself up. And I felt like I would have never have an opportunity to come to a 90-year-old company and remake it, because you remember our history was GMAC. We were spun
I
off
remember it well.
Yeah, I mean, we were spun off of GM. Here was this incredible opportunity to come and rebrand a company and to be part of something that I knew, if we did the right way, could become a success story of American business history forever. And that's one of my biggest pride points. I drive by the Allied Building in downtown Detroit, or our other, big buildings in Charlotte, and I look at that name on the top of the building, and I think, someday my grandkids are going to drive by this, and they're going to be able to point to their kids and say, my great grandma did that. And that was something that I knew it was incredible risk. There was incredible risk. I mean, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. We had taken a $17 billion TARP infusion, and at the time I was a single mom with 2 little boys at home who I needed to put food on the table for.
Wow.
But this was something I needed to do. I really just needed to do it. And man, has it paid off for me, both in terms of what I've been able to accomplish, how I've pushed myself as a human being, and professionally in terms of what I've been able to achieve that I honestly, Vince, would not have been able to achieve on the agency side. And I'm thankful for that every single day.
Well, I always say complacency is the parent of mediocrity, and
absolutely,
and but not being afraid to fail, because my philosophy is failure is defined only by the failure to try. And in my book, The Great Gretzky says you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Right.
And that's why we tell our kids, we say, hey, it's okay. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to take no. Don't be afraid to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to go try some things, particularly when you're younger and you don't have the responsibilities of being a parent or a mortgage or taking care of your elderly parents or those types of things. I encourage all of my students to say, hey, look, and we've uncovered from a lot of the great ones that when they actually got to college, we hear a lot of them say, I was going to be a doctor, and then they get there and go, God, I hated my first biology class, and I really was cool to being, a marketer or a brand marketer, but to your point, brand marketing is really all about the consumer behavior. So we say, hey, look, go study the people that you want to emulate. Go study the companies that you want to emulate. Is it Tim Cook? Is it Apple? Is it Phil Knight? Is it Nike? I mean, do you have people that you would recommend that you emulate, or companies that you emulate from that you love to see how they express and espouse their value system?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that, right? And even in my position, I will reach out to other CMOs that I admire, or I
Mm-hmm.
will reach out to companies that I admire and introduce myself and say, I would love to just spend an hour with you and talk about this. Um,
Wow.
and and people are very flattered and they're very willing
Right.
to do that. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of some of the brands you just mentioned. I went out to Apple and spent a bunch of time at Apple a couple of years
How
ago.
was that?
It was incredible. I got to go into their new headquarters and just learn. What I wanted to hear from them was how they think about design, how they think about,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this whole simple idea of man over machine and how they think about that and how that is infused in their total brand experience, because that to me is what I believe is our key differentiator, is that our brand is not just made up of great marketing. Our brand is a complete 360
Right.
experience, and everybody owns it within Ally, whether it's our CEO to our CFO to our product people. I'm a big fan of Target. I'm a huge fan of
Bingo.
the things that Target has done, and I've spent a lot of time with Rick Gomez, who's now moved into a different position at Target, who was their CMO, and understanding from him. I'm a big fan of um, a lot of music brands and what they've
Right.
done. I mean, there's a guy by the name of Steve Stout who's a good friend, runs a company called Translation.
Big fan.
He
Right.
wrote a book called The Tanning of America, and how hip hop culture has intersected everything in pop culture. Those are the kinds of people I like to reach out to and learn from. And most times people are just really, really willing to spend a little bit of time with you, even if it's half an hour or 15 minutes,
Right.
and say, here's how we think about our brand.
Well, this is what we tell our students is that, they see you and they see your big fancy title and awards, all that, but you were them one day.
Heck
You
yeah.
were you were once them, and I was once them, and we can relate. And by the way, if we can make their path easier than what you and I had, because we've crawled through glass and bashed through doors, and we didn't have all the technological. Remember the old days of the agency, how hard it was to build comps and how hard it was to get things faxed over, and you had to
Oh
edit
yeah.
times time burns, and I mean,
Hauling
like
key
hours
lines
and
all
hours.
over the place. And
Oh my God! Um, and I love the companies you mentioned. I just love the fact I'm such a packaging and brand visual ID as well. And so what we tell our students is like, study the consumption that you have, and then study your brand habits, and then how that would translate into a job pitch to you. So
right.
because that's what this is the crazy thing, is that if a student reached out to you and said, hey, look, here's how I manage my financial life, and here's how I would manage that in my education as relates to a job with you, whether you got a job open or not, you're going to be impressed that they made that effort.
Absolutely. And whether I have a job opening or not, oftentimes I will connect you with somebody else. I will make
Right.
connections, right?
Right.
I just sent 6 emails this morning for a young lady who she's a friend of my daughter's, but she took the effort to reach out to me, send me a resume. She wants to get into sports marketing. And she said, I'm not asking you for a job. I'm just asking you for some guidance. Help me, you
Boom.
know,
Mhm.
think about how should I think about this? What are the companies that I should be reaching out to? Here's who I was thinking about talking to. Do you think that this is a good list for me? So I was happy to go send some resumes out for her, and that's going to open doors. That's the other thing that I always told my kids, and I would tell anybody listening to this, you probably have connections in some space somewhere. Don't
Right.
be afraid to use your connections. Most people are happy to help you network. We know you're
100%.
not looking for a handout, you're just looking for a leg up. And we want to help you do that. It's very different than it was when we were coming up in the business. We didn't have the
No.
resources that are available to kids today. I remember when I looked for agency jobs, there was this thing called the Red Book. You might remember it, Vince. You'd go to the library, look
Very
up
well.
every agency, find their addresses, type a letter on a typewriter,
Yeah.
mail it out, and hope that you heard. There
Yeah.
weren't virtual conferences and seminars and people that you could reach out to and any of those kinds of things. And I don't think people cared about helping the next generation as much
I
as
agree
we
with that.
do.
I agree with that.
They just don't. I didn't have anybody help me find a
No.
job.
No.
Period. End of story. And so take advantage of what you have available to you today. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel shy about it.
100%.
Don't be silly and say, oh, I don't want to bug so and so. You're not bugging anybody. If they don't want to help you, they won't.
Spot on about that. And it's never personal, but you hit on that. You hit on this, is that it's about the trust that you've developed with your relationships. So if I ever get a resume from you, I'm obviously going to say, hey, she was impressed by this person. And Andrea took the time to say, hey, Vince, take a look at this person. And if they fit for you, great. If not, make a couple of recos for them. And then vice versa. I'm going to say, hey, I've run across a great young person that wants a career in the financial services marketing industry and those types of things. That's based on the trust and the fact that you and I were willing to help. But I've learned, you and I are doing the same thing. We're just doing it at a different level. And
Right.
I tell our students that. But this has been amazing. I think I've always been a fan of your professional and personal. And I think that people see coming through this interview that being a servant leader is a commitment and a responsibility. And the only payment that you and I want is when somebody gets to their level, they'll help the next generation as well. And that's really the only payment, and that's good enough for us.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I'm a big believer in servant leadership. One of the people that I admire most in this world is a guy that you'll know by the name of Rick Hendrick. Happens to be one of the most successful business people in America. Owns, the NASCAR team that obviously we sponsor, and
Right.
he instills at Hendrick Automotive as well as Hendrick Motorsports this idea of servant leadership. And here's this guy that's, a billionaire, and I can text him or pick up the phone and call him, and he will personally see through anything that he tells me he's going to do. They're big believers in servant leadership, and it just makes you realize, like, I don't know. It's like it goes back to that never drink your own Kool-Aid. You are never too big. You're never too precious. You're never too rich. You're never too successful to just do the simple things in life that you say you're going to do.
Right.
And I would just tell everybody that's listening today, just your word is everything that you've got in this world.
Right.
Just make good on it. And creating that good karma for yourself, putting that effort in, it will come back to you. And, just remember that good is the enemy of great. So always push for great.
Yeah, I tell you, Rick Hendrick, I've met Mr. Hendrick, several times through NASCAR and all that, and just the thing that always stood out to me was the humility. It's like he always stayed humble, and that was, like I said, it's one of the greatest lessons that my dad. It's like, hey, just stay humble and help people, and you just never know where this may come about. But Andrea Brimmer, CMO, PR, Ally Financial, recreated the brand. My first house was underwritten by GMAC. So, and my mother worked for a GM car dealer for a very, very long time. But just amazing, like I said, honored to be on the phone with a brand genius. I love, I say that tongue in cheek, but 50 most influential chief marketing officers amazing career in two very, very different and challenging professions, the ad agency and then, the risk she took to dive into the deep end. We really appreciate your time, your humility. I'm confident you will hear from a lot of our students as well. So we're honored and we thank you so much for your time today for the students of Virtual Melt University.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and to all the students, reach out. I'm happy to hear from you. I'm happy to help in any way I can, and keep the faith. Everything's looking up. Everything's looking positive, and attitude is everything in life. So just keep that positive attitude. You're going to be fine.
Thanks, Vince. We hope you've enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with a new edition of Melt University 2021.